Manchester. When you hear that name, what comes to mind? Perhaps the roar of Old Trafford on match day, or the legendary sounds of bands that changed music forever. Maybe you think of groundbreaking scientific discoveries or the towering chimneys that once defined an entire era of human history. But this city's story goes far deeper than any single moment. We're about to embark on an extraordinary journey spanning 2 millennia, watching as a remote military outpost transforms into the engine of the modern world, then reinvents itself once again for our contemporary age. Through the power of artificial intelligence, we can now breathe life into centuries-old illustrations and faded photographs, reconstructing the past with stunning clarity. Prepare to witness Manchester's complete transformation from its earliest days to the vibrant city standing today. Our story begins with soldiers from distant lands arriving in a cold, unfamiliar wilderness. Picture the year 79 AD. Roman legions are marching northward through what we now call England, extending the empire's reach into hostile territory. Their commander, Agricola, needs strategic strongholds to control the vital routes connecting major fortifications. His engineers select a location with natural advantages, a raised sandstone plateau where 2 waterways merge, the Medlock meeting the Irwell. The native Brigantes people inhabiting this region have their own name for it, something referencing the landscape's distinctive shape. The Romans Latinized this into Mamucium. Construction begins on a military installation designed to house roughly 500 auxiliary troops. These aren't glamorous assignments. This represents the empire's cold, damp frontier, about as far from Mediterranean comfort as one can imagine. The garrison comprises soldiers drawn from across the Roman world, Iberia, Germania, North Africa. They construct earthwork fortifications topped with timber palisades, later rebuilt using stone for permanence. Beyond the fort's protective walls, a civilian settlement gradually takes shape, the Vicus, attracting merchants, craftspeople, and soldiers' families. Perhaps a few hundred souls at most. They establish bathhouses, following Roman custom. A mansio serves as lodging for official travelers. Local pottery production begins, grain gets milled, and life continues at civilization's edge. For 3 centuries, Mamucium endures as an outpost of empire. Then, in 410 AD, everything collapses. Rome withdraws its legions, abandoning Britain entirely. Without imperial support, the infrastructure rapidly deteriorates. Within 1 generation, stone structures are being dismantled for building materials elsewhere. Roads crack and crumble. The civilian population largely disperses. The Romans leave behind fragmentary remains and linguistic traces, but little else. Mamucium slips into obscurity, its story seemingly finished. Between Roman withdrawal and Norman conquest, Manchester essentially vanishes from historical records. The name evolves. Mamucium becomes Mamesestra in Old English, eventually shifting toward the modern form. Archaeological evidence suggests some Anglo-Saxon presence, likely including a church, but documentation simply doesn't exist. When William the Conqueror commissions the Domesday Survey in 1086, Manchester barely registers, mentioned only as part of Salford's manor. Population estimates suggest just a few hundred inhabitants. Nothing distinguishes it from countless other small northwestern settlements. Just another cluster of timber structures in the landscape. But gradual growth begins. In 1222, the local manor lord obtains permission to establish a market. Markets attract commerce. Commerce generates wealth. The settlement expands around this commercial center. A parish church, St. Mary's, later elevated to cathedral status, rises on foundations of earlier Saxon religious buildings. During the 13th century, it undergoes reconstruction in the perpendicular Gothic architectural style that defines the era. Still, by any measure, the town remains insignificant. In 1400, perhaps 1,500 people live here. Surrounded by marshland, constantly threatened by flooding rivers, it's agricultural, muddy, and thoroughly unremarkable. Manchester possesses one modest advantage: wool. The surrounding Lancashire countryside produces quality wool, and Manchester develops as a centre for wool trading and textile production. It's small-scale cottage industry, but it represents something. The Reformation arrives in the 1530s when Henry VIII dissolves monasteries across England. Manchester, never heavily monastic, survives relatively intact. The church becomes collegiate in 1421, administered by a college of priests, and continues functioning. During England's Civil War, Manchester backs Parliament against Royalist forces. In 1642, Royalist troops assault the town. Local militia, poorly armed but determined, somehow repel them. Manchester earns recognition as a parliamentarian stronghold. By 1650, population reaches approximately 5,000. It's becoming a proper town, with a grammar school established in 1515, some textile-based prosperity and growing commercial reputation. But it still isn't special. Not yet. The real transformation awaits the next century. Everything changes during the 1700s, though not in ways anyone should celebrate without acknowledging the horrific human cost. Indian cotton fabrics become fashionable in late 17th century England. Compared to wool, cotton is lighter, easier to clean, and takes dyes beautifully. There's just one fundamental problem. Britain doesn't cultivate cotton. Raw fiber must be imported, then processed into cloth. And here, Manchester's prosperity becomes inseparably linked to one of history's greatest moral crimes. The cotton flowing into Manchester originates primarily from plantations across the American South and Caribbean, worked by enslaved Africans, subjected to unspeakable brutality. British ships carry manufactured goods to Africa, exchange them for enslaved human beings, transport these people in horrific conditions to the Americas, then return laden with raw cotton, sugar, and tobacco. This triangular trade fuels Manchester's rise, and the city sits at its heart. Lancashire's damp climate proves ideal for cotton processing. Initially, it's cottage industry, spinners working at home with spinning wheels, weavers operating hand looms in their dwellings. Merchants collect finished cloth and sell it, often back to plantation owners for clothing the people they've enslaved. Then mechanical innovation accelerates everything. Hargreaves invents the spinning jenny in 1764, a device spinning multiple threads simultaneously. Arkwright patents his water-powered frame in 1769. Crompton combines both technologies into the spinning mule in 1779. Suddenly, one person operating machinery can accomplish the work of dozens. But these machines are too large and expensive for home use. They require power, water wheels initially, then steam engines. They need buildings to house them. The factory system is born. The first cotton mills rise across Manchester and surrounding towns in the 1780s and 1790s. Multi-story brick structures filled with machinery, powered by steam, employing hundreds under one roof. By 1800, Manchester is transforming from market town into something unprecedented in human history, an industrial city. Cotton dominates everything. Mills multiply. Population surges. The stage is set for the 19th century, which will witness both Manchester's greatest achievements and its darkest struggles. The 19th century opens with Manchester already transformed beyond recognition. By 1801, population reaches 70,000. Cotton mills dominate the skyline. Steam engines fill the air with smoke and soot. This is the future, being constructed in real time. But the human price is devastating. Workers cram into back-to-back terraced houses in narrow courtyards. Entire families share single rooms. Sanitation doesn't exist. Clean water is unavailable. Disease spreads rapidly through these conditions. Factories operate 12, 14, even 16 hours daily. Children as young as 5 or 6 work in the mills, their small hands ideal for crawling beneath machinery to retrieve loose cotton. Accidents are commonplace. Lungs fill with cotton dust. Average life expectancy in 1840s Manchester is merely 25 years. Yet people keep arriving. What choice exists? The countryside offers no employment. Manchester provides wages, however meager. Irish immigrants flood in, especially following the 1840s potato famine. The city expands chaotically in all directions, completely unplanned. Yet the wealth being generated is extraordinary. By the 1830s, Manchester and surrounding towns produce most of the world's cotton goods. Cottonopolis, they call it. The irony is brutal. Some of England's poorest people process cotton picked by enslaved people in America. Neither group benefits from the wealth they create. Mill owners, merchants, middlemen, they're accumulating fortunes. Everyone else struggles to survive. And increasingly, Manchester's workers are asking, why can't we vote? By 1819, frustration reaches breaking point. Manchester is among England's largest cities, yet it has no parliamentary representation. Most working people have no voice in governance, no say in the laws controlling their lives. On August 16, 1819, a crowd gathers at St. Peter's Field. 60 to 80,000 people, men, women, children, assemble peacefully to hear Henry Hunt speak about parliamentary reform. They're dressed respectably. Families bring food. Banners demand liberty and representation. Local magistrates panic at the crowd's size. They order Hunt's arrest. They send in the local yeomanry, part-time cavalry, many drunk, armed with sabers. What follows is carnage. The yeomanry charge into the packed crowd, slashing with swords at anyone nearby. People scream, attempt to flee, trample each other. Professional soldiers, the 15th Hussars, are then ordered in. The stampede intensifies. When it ends, 15 people lie dead. Over 600 are injured, many with saber wounds. Hunt and other organizers are arrested and imprisoned. But the name endures: Peterloo, a bitter mockery of Waterloo. This wasn't glorious victory. This was the British state attacking its own citizens for demanding basic rights. Peterloo doesn't win immediate reform, but it plants seeds. The memory galvanizes the movement for change. Manchester's workers will eventually gain political power, matching their economic importance. 11 years after Peterloo, Manchester makes history again, this time through innovation rather than violence. September 15th, 1830. A massive crowd gathers near Liverpool Road. The world's first modern passenger railway is opening. George Stephenson's locomotive, the Rocket, will pull carriages between Liverpool and Manchester at the previously unimaginable speed of 30 miles per hour. A journey once requiring a full day by canal will now take under 2 hours. The day should be triumphant. Instead, tragedy strikes. William Huskisson, a member of Parliament, exits his carriage to greet the Duke of Wellington. Distracted, he wanders onto the track. The Rocket hits him. He dies that evening, history's first railway passenger fatality. But despite this tragedy, the railway transforms everything. Within a decade, rail lines radiate from Manchester in every direction. Raw cotton pours in faster than ever. Finished cloth flows to global markets. The industrial system becomes even more efficient, profitable, and dominant. Meanwhile, the anti-slavery movement gains strength in Britain during the 1830s and 1840s. More people confront slavery's moral horror. Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807, slavery itself in its colonies by 1833. But Manchester remains conflicted. Cotton must come from somewhere. American slavery continues, and many mill owners prefer not to discuss their raw materials' origins. It's uncomfortable, bad for business. Yet many Manchester workers recognize the connection. They're exploited by mill owners. Enslaved people are exploited by plantation owners. The system is the same, just different degrees of brutality. In 1842, a young German named Friedrich Engels arrives in Manchester to work in his father's cotton business. He's 22, well-educated, from a wealthy family. Nothing prepares him for what he witnesses. Engels walks through the slums, documenting everything: cellars where families live in darkness and dampness, open sewers, children with rickets, workers coughing blood from cotton lung. He observes the mills, the relentless machinery, the 14-hour shifts, the casual cruelty. In 1845, he publishes The Condition of the Working Class in England. Devastating exposé of industrial capitalism at its worst. Engels meets Karl Marx. They become lifelong collaborators. Together in 1848, they write the Communist Manifesto. Later, money from Engels's family cotton mill helps fund Marx's research for Das Kapital. Then in 1861, everything reaches a crisis point. The American Civil War begins. The Union Navy blockades Confederate ports. Within months, raw cotton stops flowing to Britain. Manchester's mills run out of supply. By 1862, the Lancashire cotton famine has begun. Mills close. Hundreds of thousands of workers lose employment. Families starve. Soup kitchens open citywide but can't feed everyone. Children beg in streets. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. Confederate diplomats approach Britain with an offer: support the South, break the blockade, and cotton will flow again. Your workers will have jobs, your mills will run. Just support our right to keep people enslaved. Manchester's workers face an impossible choice: support the Confederacy and end their suffering, or support the Union and abolition while continuing to starve. On New Year's Eve, 1862, thousands gather at the Free Trade Hall. They debate, they vote, they draft a letter to Abraham Lincoln. They choose abolition. They're starving, they're desperate, and they choose to keep starving rather than support slavery. Lincoln writes back, deeply moved, calling their decision an instance of sublime Christian heroism which has not been surpassed in any age or in any country. The cotton famine ends in 1865 when the Civil War does. The workers have made a moral stand. A statue of Lincoln stands in Manchester today, commemorating that choice. By the 1870s, Manchester is extraordinarily wealthy. It's Europe's 6th largest city. Cotton has created vast fortunes, and some of that wealth, not enough, but some, goes toward building something permanent. In 1877, the new town hall opens. Designed by Alfred Waterhouse, it's a Gothic revival masterpiece dominating the city center. Inside, the Great Hall soars upward, decorated with murals by Ford Madox Brown depicting Manchester's history, from Roman times through medieval markets to the industrial present. The building declares, "We're not just a grimy factory town. We have culture, ambition, dignity." By 1900, Manchester's population reaches 544,000. The city produces cotton goods for the entire world. A saying emerges: what Manchester does today, the world does tomorrow. As the new century dawns, Manchester stands at the peak of its power and influence. It won't last. When John Rylance dies in 1888, he's among England's richest men. His widow, Enriqueta, decides to build something extraordinary in his memory. The John Rylance Library opens in 1900 on Deansgate. It's breathtaking, neo-Gothic with soaring vaulted reading rooms, intricate stone carving, stained glass like a cathedral, built to house rare manuscripts. It's a temple to learning in the industrial city's heart. But darker times are approaching. World War I devastates Manchester like everywhere else. Thousands enlist. The PALS battalions, units of men from the same communities and workplaces, suffer horrific casualties. Entire streets lose their young men on the same day at the Somme. But war stimulates industry. Manchester's factories produce uniforms, munitions, machinery. Women take factory jobs in unprecedented numbers. The interwar years prove difficult. International competition intensifies. American and Japanese cotton mills are more efficient. Indian independence movements boycott British cotton, a deliberate rejection of colonial trade that enriched Manchester while impoverishing India. Manchester's textile dominance begins slipping. Then World War II. Manchester is a major industrial center and a target. The Manchester Blitz begins December 1940. For 2 nights, December 22nd and 23rd, German bombers pound the city center. Over 600 people die. Thousands of buildings are destroyed or damaged. The historic center is gutted. After 1945, Manchester struggles. The textile industry continues its long decline. Mills close. Jobs disappear. The city that made the modern world is being left behind by it. By the 1960s and 70s, central Manchester is depressed. Victorian warehouses stand empty. The city feels tired, grimy, past its prime. The 1960s slum clearances demolish huge areas of Victorian terraced housing. Communities are destroyed in the name of modernization, replaced with tower blocks and concrete estates that quickly develop their own problems. But Manchester still has music. The Smiths, Stone Roses, Happy Mondays. Manchester produces some of Britain's most influential bands, and football. Manchester United and Manchester City become 2 of England's most famous clubs. When United's Busby Babes die in the Munich air disaster of 1958, the city mourns together. When United wins the European Cup in 1968, the city celebrates together. Music and football become part of Manchester's identity as cotton fades from memory. In the 1980s and 90s, Manchester starts converting its massive Victorian warehouses, relics of the cotton trade, into apartments, offices, bars, restaurants. Once derelict areas become vibrant. Young professionals move into the city center. The Commonwealth Games in 2002 provide another boost. The Etihad Stadium is built. East Manchester is regenerated. The city looks modern, confident, forward-looking. Universities expand massively. The University of Manchester and Manchester Metropolitan University together educate over 100,000 students. The city is young again. Over 40% of the population is under 30. Media companies relocate from London. The BBC moves significant operations to Media City UK in Salford Quays, former industrial docklands transformed into a gleaming modern quarter. By 2010, Manchester is booming again. Today, Manchester is a city of about 630,000 people, though Greater Manchester contains over 3 million, making it Britain's second-largest conurbation. The city has reinvented itself. Cotton mills are now luxury apartments. Warehouses house tech startups and creative agencies. Spinning Fields, where textile warehouses once stood, is now a financial district with glass towers. The music scene continues. From Joy Division to Oasis to contemporary artists, Manchester keeps producing influential bands. The nightlife is legendary. The gay village centered on Canal Street is one of Europe's largest and most vibrant LGBTQ+ communities. Football has gone global. Manchester United and Manchester City have fans worldwide. But challenges remain. Inequality is stark. Some areas are among England's most deprived. Homelessness is highly visible. The gap between rich and poor grows. The 2017 Manchester Arena bombing, a terrorist attack after an Ariana Grande concert that killed 22 people, many of them children, shocked the city. But the response showed Manchester's character. The city came together. The worker bee, Manchester's symbol since the Industrial Revolution, representing the industriousness of the city's workers. became a symbol of solidarity. From Roman fort to medieval market town, to the world's first industrial city, to a modern post-industrial metropolis, Manchester has continually transformed itself. The city's buildings may change, but the character of its people, resilient, innovative, defiant, remains constant. That's the story of Manchester. 2,000 years of transformation, struggle, triumph, and reinvention. A city that helped create the modern world, then had to find its place within it. Discover Manchester's 2,000 years of transformation and triumph. Be part of its future. Explore, create, and thrive. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.